Welcome to the D20 Future Show. I am, as always, your host and your GM, Richard. Welcome to the first of our two This Podcast Does Still Exist episodes before we return to our superhero adventure at some point in the future. It's taken me far too long to edit, and I fear that the next episode, the game of Jason Statham's Big Vacation recorded to celebrate Dragon Meet 2024, may also take me a little while, but I will release it as soon as it is ready. While podcasts have been a bit thin on the ground, the D20 Future Show Live, our Twitch livestream show, continues every other Tuesday at 18:30 BST. Assuming we can gather both cast members, we'll be continuing our The Expanse RPG campaign on Tuesday the 15th of July, and we'd love to have you join us. This episode is one of our occasional interview specials, and do interviewees come any more special than industry stalwart James Wallis? You decide. I interviewed James earlier in the year about Big Table, the brand new trade body for the UK and Irish tabletop games industry. Since the interview involves James and I, we talk about a great many other subjects too, so we hope you enjoy the next episode of the D20 Future Show. Hello and welcome to the D20 Future Show. I am, as always, your host Richard, and I am joined for another interview special by James Wallis, games designer, writer, consultant, publisher, educator, and soon to be the executive director of Big Table. James, how are you doing?
Very well. It's always a pleasure to chat.
Always a delight to have you on. I have, in deference to the fact that we always find a lot to talk about, cleared my schedule this evening. My wife is cooking this evening when it would normally be my turn, so thank you, I think. But you're doing well?
Yes. Yeah, it's 2025. The world appears to be in utter disarray, but life generally is interesting. I mean, Big Table we'll talk about in a minute, but I seem to have had this thing where I now lecture about the history of Warhammer to public audiences, which is going surprisingly well. We may talk about that later on as well, which is just kind of not really where I expected my career to be going, to end up at, close to 250 people in a very large room above a pub in Bristol, telling them about the Brian Ansell days of workshop, and it's an interesting life.
Yes, well, I guess stuff keeps happening, and as long as you try and find the interesting bits, it'll stay interesting.
That's kind of a maxim by which I live my life.
Excellent. It's a pretty solid gaming maxim, isn't it? Pull the lever, try the thing, kick down the door.
Better to regret something you have done than to regret something you haven't, as the butthole surfers remind you this.
Elegantly segueing into, so we're here to talk about Big Table. What's Big Table, for those who have not heard about it?
Big Table is a trade body for the tabletop games industry in the UK and Ireland. It's actually sort of an acronym, British and Irish Games Trade Association, or it was going to be Assembly, which is more of a kind of the blue bit of table. But that aside, basically, as an industry, we're pushing a turnover, by my estimate, of around £750 million a year. An awful lot of which is Games Workshop, admittedly, and quite a lot of which is Hasbro. Mm-hmm. But at the same time, we are a significantly punchy industry, and we have no internal organisation whatsoever as games. We kind of hang off the edge of the toy industry, which has big shows like the London Toy Fair, which happened last week at the end of January. There's almost no representation for games and zero representation for hobby games there. Alley Cat games turn up. Hasbro obviously are there, but Hasbro are primarily showing off their toy lines.
Yeah.
We have no trade shows. We don't talk as an industry. There are very few internal forums, barring a few Facebook groups. I've been in this industry since the 80s. I've been running companies in the industry since the 90s at most levels, in publishing and role play. I've worked for Asmodee. I've freelanced and consulted for more companies than I can name, some of which I legally can't name due to non-disclosure agreements. And it just feels like people are still making, particularly new companies, are still making the same mistakes that I was making in the 90s, because there's nobody out there or no way to them to find out what those mistakes are. They're signing bad deals with bad companies for distribution. They're signing, they're manufacturing the games before they've got a distribution deal in place. All of these, which anyone in the industry will tell you is a fundamental mistake, there's no way for them to find out it's a fundamental mistake. We don't even know how big the industry is. That £750 million figure is me with a back of an envelope and what I know of Games Workshop's turnover. Games Workshop, which incidentally is now a FTSE 100 company.
Yeah.
It's one of the 100 biggest companies in the country. It is bigger than EasyJet. It is bigger than Greg's. It is bigger than ITV. ITV makes Coronation Street. Games Workshop makes Toy Soldiers. They have a market cap of £4.5 billion right now. They are astonishing. And yet there is no kind of trade representation for games, whether that's strategy games or family games, miniatures games, strategy board games, collectible card games, none of that. And we don't talk to each other. The different sectors don't talk to each other at all. I just feel there's an enormous gap. Mm-hmm. There's an equivalent French organisation, the UEJ in America. There's Gamma. Gamma claims to be a global organisation, but really isn't. And we have problems. There are huge problems that face the UK and Ireland specifically. How we deal with the EU, shipping, many, many other things that are unique to this little set of islands. And having a central body, a membership body for the industry would really make, I believe, a very significant difference to how we function as an industry and how individuals within it can function as treating games as a career. There's nowhere for job ads at the moment. If you want a toy ad, yeah, there's a toy job in the toy industry. Yes, there's adverts and places for that. There's nothing in the UK other than kind of word of mouth and Blue Sky or Twitter if you're still on Twitter.
Yes, I think increasingly that's less useful for certainly the people I know within the UK games industry. But
yes, if I saw a job ad on Twitter, I'd very much think twice about responding to it.
Yes, indeed. Well, I guess that covers the kind of the general scope of why we need it. So when did the need seem obvious to you? When did the idea? I think you vaguely spoke about maybe going to be doing a thing at UK Games Expo this year, I seem to remember. Is that...
I did. I was talking to people about it at Expo. I've actually been thinking about it since I left Asmodee, which is about 2.5 years ago now.
Yeah.
But the reason I left Asmodee was I had long COVID. Mm-hmm. So, which physically I'm absolutely fine, but mentally it's affected my recall and my focus. And it took me a while to kind of recover from that. So I spent a couple of years going around talking to people going, there is a need for this organisation, there's a business case for it, I'm probably not the person to run it. And people were kind of going, And I was going, well, you're not interested in running it or backing it. So as time has gone on, I've realised, first of all, I'm getting better. Secondly, if I don't step up and run it, nobody else is going to. Mm-hmm. And thirdly, I have the industry experience. I've been, as I say, at most levels and in several sectors of this industry. I'm reasonably well known. My name is reasonable, and my reputation is reasonably well known. I like to think I'm reasonably trusted for my track record, whether that's running Hogshead Publishing, proving that a British role-playing company can actually work in the 1990s, up to the consultation stuff I've done lately, my writings, my analysis, and all of that. So, as you say, at UK Games Expo, I finally decided this is the moment to put my money where my mouth is and go, yes, let's get this thing off the ground. It does not yet exist as a legal entity because it's going to be a non-profit. That's altogether a different beast to running a limited company. I've run several limited companies. I run a couple at the moment. But for a limited company, you can basically pay £100, there's your limited company, and you can do pretty much what you want with it. Non-profits, the Articles of Association, are essentially the rule book for how the company will run, and because the company is not governed by the shareholders, or not controlled by the shareholders, it's controlled by the members, and it's the games industry where people are used to reading rule books and looking for edge cases and loopholes. Our Articles of Association absolutely have to be perfectly lined up. And essentially, we have to define the company and how it is going to work, encode those in the Articles of Association, and then incorporate the company, rather than incorporate the company and then you can rewrite your articles later, but it's a huge palaver because you need a board of directors, which needs to be elected by the membership, and they need to approve things like that. And some of it would need to go through an annual general meeting. We are hoping to have the first annual general meeting at UK Games Expo 2025. Mm-hmm. They've given us some space, which is enormously generous of them. But the plan is to launch Big Table in March or April, assuming we can get everything in place by then. And then the first first actual proper meeting, and hopefully some seminars and other events at UK Games Expo. That's the plan.
Right, and is UK Games Expo likely to be a sort of big calendar point each year, or?
Yes, absolutely. But because it's where the UK industry and Irish industry, everybody comes together, as well as, large chunks of the European industry as well, and the global industry generally. And we're not going to exclude those people as members. They can join as well and get, the benefits of the reports and the analysis and all the rest of it that we'll be putting out. But to be a voting member, you need to be based in the UK and Ireland.
Okay.
But yes, because Expo is the great coming together, it makes sense to have the major meetings there, because people are not going to have to travel for it. They'll be there already.
Sure.
Plus, the crew at Expo have been enormously accommodating, enormously on side with our plans. It's a pleasure doing business with them.
Good stuff. So what will Big Table do, I guess, is the obvious question. What will it do, and where's the need?
Okay, well, first of all, to facilitate communication within the industry, the idea is to set up a private members-only website, which will include forums, dedicated forums for the different sectors of the industry, but also for problems specifically facing us, an industry directory, so that we can contact each other. All of the things that a decent membership organisation like that would do kind of as a matter of course, and I'm sure you may well be a member of a professional organisation or two in your day job. Beyond that, we want to commission research into the size of the industry, the scope of the industry. What was the best-selling game in the UK last year? What was the best-selling role-playing game? What was the best-selling board game? I don't know, and I don't know anyone else who does know, because as far as I know, nobody is commissioning this research. And this is not an easy thing to do, because you can't just, ask retailers to fill in stuff by hand. I went, because I've been having meetings with other similar organisations, I went to UKI, which is the UK Interactive Entertainment Association, which looks after the video games industry. There's two, actually, in video game. There's Tiger and there's UKI. UKI is the larger of the two. And UKI puts together the weekly what is the best-selling video games in the UK list. And I went, how do you do that? How do you do that? Well, a few years ago, we bought the company that makes the EPOS systems that goes into Game and all the other video game retailers. But think that might be, first of all, out of our league. Secondly, getting tabletop retailers to agree to all take the same EPOS system in their shops. That's not going to happen. It's like herding cats. So we're going to need to work out a way of doing this. And I'm not saying that I've got one, but I'm saying I'm, aware of the organizations that we need to talk to who can help us put together this system so we know what's selling. And it may be a matter of talking to the distributors. It may be a matter of, working out some digital system to do it. But that kind of number, how big is the industry? Is it growing? Is it shrinking? All of these numbers, it's useful to know them for whether you're a retailer or a publisher. But also if you're going to the bank with a big project, the first thing they're going to say is, well, tell me about your industry. Tell me, what's the market leader? What's the size of it? Is it a growth industry? Nobody's got those numbers at the moment. Yes, we can vaguely point at Games Workshop, but there's only one Games Workshop, and there is not likely to be another. So that sort of thing. We want to put together reports. We want to put together things like best practice and codes of conduct for the industry. What do we do about AI? As an industry, do we take on an AI? Different companies have different attitudes to it. Green manufacturing and recyclability in games. We don't think of games when we buy a game, when we play a game. We don't think of it as something that's going to need to be recycled at some point. But recycling doesn't just cover the game itself, it covers huge parts of the manufacturing process as well. Wastage in manufacturing, also shipping costs. People ship, the majority of the world's board games are made in China. Still, even though shipping costs have rocketed up since COVID, there are existing reports, but they're not UK specific. We can get hold of things like that. And then, because we're outside the EU, this wouldn't affect our Irish members in the Republic of Ireland, but in the UK, the European Union is bringing on new restrictions on whether it's products have to be marked on how sustainable they are, or new customs regulations. We went round Essen, the biggest tabletop show in the world, in Essen, in Germany, every October, talking to pretty much every UK and Irish company we could find there. And the one thing they all said is sort out just firm guidance on how, bringing stuff in, VAT and import restrictions on bringing stock to the show. Nobody knows for sure. Every company is going to their local experts on it. They are getting radically different answers, which results in some of them literally the evening before the show sitting on the floor of a German customs office somewhere filling in paperwork by hand for every single product line they're trying to bring into the show. This is ridiculous. What we need is one body that can go to, that has the financing and the resources to go to the biggest, most authoritative city company that deals with this stuff, go, we are going to commission a report from you, commission that report, and then we make it available to all our members for the price of membership. That's just what a professional body should do. That sort of thing, that's what a good trade body is there for. It's to make everyone's lives a bit easier. There's no point in duplicating this kind of effort across every single company.
No, indeed. I think we all, people who pay attention to this sort of thing, saw GPSR come and watch
exactly.
Everybody, lots and lots of businesses separately go, I have no idea how to respond to this. I don't know what we're going to do.
Yeah. And there's a good chance it's going to happen all over again in about a year with sustainability labelling.
Gosh,
yeah, it's a mess. Being outside Europe is a tremendous headache for small businesses, which the majority of games companies are. Even what we think of as a moderate size games company is, in the standards of companies, still a small company.
Yes.
So, with the exception of Games Workshop.
Yeah, I think almost everything you say, I guess, can be attached with the asterisk, with the exception of Games Workshop. Yeah.
Just assume there's an asterisk and a footnote. Yes. Games Workshop, exception to every rule.
Yes, something about being the biggest in your industry by miles certainly helps.
It is. The more I look at Games Workshop, the more of an astonishing company they are.
Yes, yeah. So, GPSR, just for anyone, because I believe we're getting maybe a bit technical for the average role-playing nerd. What is or was GPSR, and what should we or what should anyone in the UK be doing about it? General Product Safety Registration is what it stands for, but that's all I know about it, except that I saw lots of businesses go, we just can't sell stuff into Europe for a bit till we work out what this means. Yeah,
essentially it's a system of labelling that all products being imported into the EU have to follow. And I have to admit, I'm not running a manufacturing company at the moment, or a publishing company, so I have not looked that closely into it myself. And some of the larger companies have run essentially online seminars for this kind of thing. They've got experts to talk about it. But almost nothing happened until it was about a month before it was due to come in as a firm regulation. It had been ticking over for 2 or 3 years, but it just hadn't pinged on anyone's radar within the industry. Or if somebody had said, what are we doing about GPSR? Nobody had paid any attention to it until suddenly somebody said something and everyone realised that, they should really pay. If they want to supply product to Europe, this is something they were going to have to pay attention to. So yes, it's exactly the sort of thing that, and I wish I had actually bitten the bullet 6 months earlier and got Big Table off the ground, because it would have been a fantastic case study for us. We could have done a brilliant report. We could have saved the industry as a whole a great deal of money, and I think we'd have got a whole bunch of memberships off the back of it. Oh, well, hindsight and all that.
I get the feeling, don't worry, something new will come along.
Oh, it will.
Yeah.
But yeah, it alerts on simple stuff like changes to taxation, changes to company law. I get regular bulletins from Companies House, and up until a few months ago, I was just deleting them unread, because I think that's what almost everyone does. They're very tedious. Mm-hmm. But simply having a central body that can go, you might want to pay attention to this, or mention this to your accountant, mention this to your company lawyer, see if it affects you.
All right. I'm trying to break this down for the, I assume, above average gaming nerd who is listening to the D20 Future Show.
Yes, this is very dry stuff. I'm aware this is very inside baseball.
I suspect an interview about the setting up of an industry trade body is always going to be a little inside baseball, but we're doing our best, listener. But I mean, you've downloaded it now. You might as well keep listening. Who is it for, I guess? Because the industry can be everything from somebody who's written one thing for DM's Guild to Games Workshop. And that sliding scale is enormous.
Yeah.
And I think one of the things that's so brilliant about the industry is that the barrier to entry is almost nothing these days. I mentioned DM's Guild.
It's so low. It is so easy to become a games publisher. You can do it literally in an evening.
Yeah.
And including setting up accounts at Itch, and actually I think it takes a little longer to set one up at Drive-Thru. But, places where you can put your PDF on sale. But yeah, bang out your idea on LibreOffice, save it as a PDF, download some copyright-free art, and you're away. You're a publisher. And that's one level. We want the new companies, the small companies, we want to encourage them and give them the tools and the understanding to grow within the industry. But larger companies as well. Essentially, it is for companies. Mm-hmm. It's not for individuals unless you are a single-person publisher. If you are producing product that is sold to a general market, then we have information that we want you to be a member. It's not for freelancers, it's not for creatives, partly because we can't be all things to all people, and partly because there are already organisations for people like that. TTGDA, the American Group for Tabletop Games Designers, exists. TIN exists. Playtest UK exists. There are other similar organisations, and I'm quite sure there are similar networks for artists, for freelance writers, and freelance designers. Essentially, it's for companies. Mm-hmm. We may broaden that at some point, but what we're focusing on at the moment is communication between companies, information for companies that will be of use to publishers. There will be an introductory rate for small companies. If it's your first year or you're turning over less than 50,000 a year, there will be we haven't actually set the membership fees yet, but there will be a very low membership fee, and then they will ramp up based on turnover until... I won't go into it because I say it's not set. But I've been taking a cue, as I say, I'm talking to Yuki and their membership fees. If you are, admittedly, they include people like Rockstar and some major companies. But the top level for a year's membership of Yuki is £88,000 plus VAT. And I would feel very bad charging an individual that.
Yes.
But then
indeed.
You would have to be making... I don't think there's many individuals making 25 million quid off the games industry in a given year. Maybe one or two. Maybe if you've got that Pokemon card that they only made 6 of, maybe you could make that much. Or alternatively, if you are the managing director of Games Workshop. Actually, I have no idea what his salary is, and I'm probably doing him a huge disservice.
Who knows? But he seems to be doing a pretty good job.
He is. Kevin Roundtree, he's a fascinatingly mysterious character. The Financial Times, doing a big article on Warhammer a couple of weeks ago, couldn't find a single photograph of him.
Right. Which,
for somebody running a £4.5 billion company, that's to have no public profile at all is quite something.
My GM's brain can't resist spinning things out of that, but...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. There is one of the fan wikis has a photograph of him. Apparently that's actually a financial journalist from one of the Sunday papers.
A mysterious man at the head of the biggest gaming company in the world. Anyway, we're not here to talk about him. We are here to talk about you. I think we have touched a fair bit on your credentials. You've been around in the game industry for a while.
Yes. Longer than I care to think about. I was thinking about this earlier today, actually, because I'm thinking about fanzines for a thing at the moment. I started with fanzines while I was still at school in my mid-teens, just, grotty, photocopied, self-written, in many cases, self-illustrated D&D adventures, and, here's some starship designs for Traveller and some cars for Car Wars, that kind of stuff. And it just... it was selling 50 or 100 copies of an issue. This was not high level by any means, but it did two things. It taught me how to write this stuff in a way that people wanted to read. Mm-hmm. And secondly, it was my first experience with networking, because you take your fanzines along to Dragonmeet. This is not Dragonmeet as it exists now. Dragonmeet was originally a Games Workshop convention that ran in London in the 80s. And actually, when we set up Dragonmeet in 2000, we went to Games Workshop Legal and said, you used to run Dragonmeet, but you've let the trademark lapse. Do you mind if we use the same name? And they went, no, it's fine. So we've had it. I say I sold my interest in Dragonmeet years and years ago. But Dragonmeet 82, I think, was my very first games event. And I took copies of my very bad fanzine along and met people like Ian Marsh and Paul Mason and, oh goodness, I'm blanking on others, but people I am still in contact with to this day. and, talking about fanzines and making fanzines, and whether it's simply, no, you can get it printed cheaper here at this place, or, these stores will take copies, these stores won't, it's not worth or techniques, or writers, or just making contacts. And from there, I started a second one when I started my degree, came to London to do my degree, and then very quickly moved into writing for the professional magazines of the time, Warlock, White Dwarf, Adventurer, long gone, sadly. And again, that was because the people, Paul Mason and Ian Marsh, who had been doing Dragon Lords and Imazine when I first met them, were now editor and assistant editor on White Dwarf. So it was fairly easy to start writing for that. It's just, you put people in contact with each other, which is what we as an industry are very bad at the moment. The only place where the industry really comes together is UK Games Expo. And trying to have business negotiations in the bar of the Hilton Hotel on the NEC compound outside Birmingham, after you've spent a day trying to sell games to people, paying £8 or £9 a pint, or whatever it is. It is the most expensive bar I've ever come across. Hotel bar, certainly. It's not a great way to do business. No. Really. We need more organisation like that. So yes, to give a very long answer to your very short question, been doing this stuff since the early 80s, been writing initially amateurishly and then quite quickly professionally for 40 years now in the games arena. I think my first article came out late 84 or early 85.
Okay, I won't tell you how old I was then, but it wasn't very old.
No, I get this quite a lot. I'm aware.
Yeah, you have been involved in the industry for a while. And done a wide range of things, including publishing your own game, publishing other games, and so on.
Yeah.
Who else is kind of involved in Big Table? I'm presuming this is more than just currently your bright idea.
At the moment, it's what I will say is I have an advisory body of people I trust within the industry. I'm not naming them publicly because they're not being paid at the moment.
Okay.
There is a good chance, first of all, that you would recognise a bunch of the names on it, and secondly, that you will hear them again because they will probably form the initial board of directors when the company legally exists and requires that. But at the moment, I'm not actually saying who else is involved.
Okay.
I have had a brilliant PhD student called Izzy Bartley who was paid by her PhD at a university to spend 2 months, and she has been enormously useful in helping set stuff up and get things in place and start balls rolling. At the moment, it is it's certainly because we don't know. I have no idea how many people are going to join, how many companies are actually going to want to sign up. I've no idea what our balance sheet is going to look like. So at the moment, I'm going, well, once it's launched, I will work for it in initially a per hour basis, sure, not at a very high per hour rate. And if it looks like, if we know that we've got a stable enough cash flow that we can afford to hire people, at that point, we will hire people. But there will be, as with most non-profits, we will have the board of directors, the directors who will essentially set policy, make decisions, and all of which will be voted on annually by the membership. And then there will be the executive whose job is to not just carry that out and do the research, but also look after memberships and subscriptions, organise events, whether those are, we want to organise face-to-face meetups on a regular basis for the industry. The plan 2 or 3 years down the road is to see if we can put a trade show together, a proper industry trade show, because there really is only one for specialist games at the moment, and that's the GAMA trade show in America, run by GAMA, the Games Manufacturers Association over there. London Toy Fair, as I said, hobby games companies don't go to it. They do go to Nuremberg Toy Fair, but again, that's mostly family board games. It's very board game orientated rather than specialist stuff. And simply having somewhere where retailers can come and see this is the scope of the hobby, these are the new companies with interesting stuff, actually see the product, try it out, speak to the publishers themselves, would, I think, give the industry an enormous boost. And when I say there isn't really one in Europe either. The French don't have one. The Germans don't really have one apart from Nuremberg. I think it would be an enormous draw, and I think it would really help to put the UK industry back on the map, UK and Irish industry back on the map. Because what a lot of people don't realise is that in the late 70s, the UK was the beating heart of the global tabletop industry. Before Games Workshop, or in the very early nascent days of Games Workshop, there was a monthly magazine in newsagents called Games and Puzzles that sold really well. That was, I believe, even advertised on TV. It was that level of stuff. National newspapers were devoting review stuff to new board games and writing about them. We, of course, had John Waddington's, the massive company that's publishing Monopoly, but had published Cluedo, the company that had discovered Cluedo in the 50s. Cluedo's done... It's difficult to get actual sales numbers on a lot of these classic games, but Cluedo's done well over, I think, 150 million copies, which puts it up at kind of... That's decent Harry Potter sales levels in terms of being a cultural artifact. We underestimate just how big games are. Monopoly, I've heard 325 million, which is enormous for a consumer entertainment item. That's vast. Even something like Jenga's sold 100 million copies. There are very, very few books. I don't mean a year. I mean very, very few books that sell 100 million copies.
Sure.
Let alone records. Again, hard to get accurate figures. The figure I've heard for the best-selling album of all time, Michael Jackson's Thriller, 70 million copies. Jenga's sold 100 million. And Jenga's it is a household word. If you say Jenga, everybody knows what you mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
If you say Thriller as well, we underestimate the importance of games as a cultural force.
Yeah, these I guess very few, and I suppose that's inevitable in whatever forum you're in. There's these very few that everybody recognises the name of. Everybody recognises. Almost everyone could tell you a little bit about how to play most of them as well.
Yes.
And then the games industry has this kind of two-tiered thing, whereas there's what I think of as the good games that punch through just a little bit, the ones that you see in bookshops or the like, and then there's the kind of, I don't know, this other sort of sludge of basically the same almost mechanicless game or quiz game or something that also seems to be everywhere, and you'll never see that one again, but you'll see something very like it.
Yes.
But we have these kind of capstone ones that are just everybody knows. You know, when you talk about board games, everyone says Monopoly, and everyone who knows about games then has to find a nice way of saying, yeah, but Monopoly's not a good game. We don't mean that. We mean good ones.
Yes.
But, yeah.
I mean, there are ways... It's a huge derail, but there are ways of making Monopoly good. Monopoly can be played as an interesting game if you play it actually by the rules as written very tightly. And, yeah. But it's a more than 100-year-old design.
Indeed.
Games design has come along so far since then. You know, we don't suggest, I'd like to read a good book. Yes, here's something from 1905. You wouldn't normally... Yes, there are good books from 1905,
yeah,
but it's not what you'd suggest as a standard. Why are we still suggesting Monopoly?
Absolutely.
Monopoly itself, for those who don't know, did not actually come out in 1905. The Landlord's Game, which Monopoly was ripped off from, came out in 1905. Monopoly is essentially exactly the same as the Landlord's Game, plus one or two extra features. It's a 120-year-old design.
And yet we all still know it, and we've all had a bad time with it at some point. But yes, I acknowledge it can be better if you play it by all the rules, but it still has some pretty fundamental flaws that many games have come away from now and improved on.
My favourite little just trivia, the thing about the Monopoly board that you don't really think about because you're so familiar with it. Free parking and go to jail. Why do those exist? What does that mean? Why are they on the board? Well, the original board of the Landlord's Game, the Landlord's Game was specifically designed to demonstrate the iniquities of the rental property market and to demonstrate how money inevitably flows to those who already have it.
Oh, thank goodness that problem was solved.
Yeah. So free parking on the original board is a public park where anyone may go and spend time, and go to jail is a private park, and if you trespass there by landing on it, you are arrested and sent to jail. That's why those two squares exist. It's part of the original, almost socialist design of the game. It wasn't... Elizabeth McGee, who designed it originally, was a follower of a particular radical economist, whose name I can never remember. But so she wasn't specifically a socialist, but it is that kind of, public ownership versus private ownership, demonstrating the differences between the two. And so they exist in this almost vestigial form on the Monopoly board, and we don't question why they're there. But they make no real sense on the current one. Anyway, just trivia.
That aside, I mean, this thing about, while the industry is massive and there are some very few cultural touch points, there's then lots of really, really good games that have not quite made it through.
Yes.
I was in a charity shop a few weeks ago where they had a copy of Forbidden Desert.
Oh, Matt Leacock's brilliant series, yes.
Yeah, I would have bought it on the spot if I didn't already have a copy of Forbidden Desert in that cupboard. But I made a point of saying, that's really good. You should sell that. They also had a copy of Burgle Brothers.
You're kidding.
Which is now in that cupboard. I just know it's good. I haven't got much beyond that, but it's I'm fairly certain it's quite an old copy.
I mean, it's not a terribly old game, but it's been through several editions. It's interesting. I scour charity shops to occasionally you find stuff. Usually, I'm looking for the older stuff because I'm a bit of a collector. But stuff like just the local Oxfam with a copy of San Marco, which you probably don't know, but it's a Ravensburger game from about 25 years ago. Alan Moon, who designed Ticket to Ride, and unpunched in almost mint condition, £6.
Gosh,
extraordinary. But the other thing to mention about charity shops is when COVID came to an end, there was an assumption that a lot of people would just kind of be done with board games at that point. Board games had an amazingly good COVID, and people thought, okay, well, people will go back to real life socialising, they'll give up the board games, and there'll be a flood of stuff, and that into charity shops and people just getting rid of it. That did not happen. Sales remained really strong. People were not getting rid of the games. Occasionally, you'd find a little hoard of somebody who'd clearly bought 304 and the family had not terribly enjoyed them, and they got rid of them. But generally, charity shops. I was hoping for a boom, and I did not get it. But there is fantastic stuff to be had in charity shops. Scotland Yard, which is advertised in this country as a kids' game, and really isn't. At the very least, a family game. I don't know if your household has that one.
We don't. I do remember, as a child, going to a friend's house and playing it, and it turns out if you've played it before, you have an enormous advantage in that game. It is not easy to pick up being Mr. X from scratch.
No, being Mr. X, because it's a very early one versus many design. So one player is the criminal trying to escape, and everyone else, with limited knowledge of what's going on, is trying to entrap them. But it's huge fun.
Great.
And there's a genuine sense of achievement if you, either as X or as the police force, manage to win. And it won the Spiel des Jahres. In the kind of the annals of gaming, it's a fairly major entry. You do find a lot of copies of it in charity shops. So I think people, assuming that it'll be a lovely thing for little Timmy and his friends to play, and discovering, as you say, it's more complex. I mean, the rules themselves are not terribly sophisticated, but the gameplay does require concentration.
Well, we've drifted a long way away from Big Table, which is...
I'm afraid that conversations with me tend to.
Perhaps, listener, that's no bad thing. Is there anything else, I guess, you're desperate to say about Big Table? Obviously, the possibilities for making smaller businesses' lives much better by helping them make fewer mistakes, allowing the industry as a whole to lobby in any way by having numbers and so on, both enormous advantages. We've touched on those. Anything else you're kind of, that the listener might need to know, particularly if they run a very small or wish to run a game company? I
think that's the main thing. If you are thinking of setting up a games company, and let's be honest, I mean, yes, I got into this ridiculously early in my teens, but almost everyone I know has kind of, I've got an idea for a game, or I could write up that D&D adventure, the one that went really well, as, I could sell that. I think just... even if you don't come and talk to Big Table, at least talk to somebody who's already done it, somebody who is doing it, and get some advice. Because, yes, you can do it really easily, but that is not necessarily the best way of doing it. And it depends what you want. If you just want, I published this thing, I put it up there with some out of copyright art that I found on the net, and it was fine, and, 30 people downloaded copies of it. Wow. Yeah. That's fine. That's what I was doing in the 80s with my fanzine. It was just the pleasure of having published something. But if you want to take it a little bit more seriously, then talk to people who are already doing it, because the games industry is not quite like other publishing industries or other industries, full stop. It has its own way of doing things, and there are an awful lot of pitfalls that I fell into a while ago. I still see people fall into today. They are fairly easily avoided if you know what you're doing. And hopefully we will be setting up the networks and having downloadable things that will make, do come and check it. Whether it's a role-playing game or a board game or a miniatures game or a collectible card game, do not think about launching a collectible card game unless you have a stupid amount of money, please. Every so often, because I do this consultancy stuff, I get people coming up and going, I've got an idea for a collectible card game. It's like, do you have a publisher in mind? Or actually have talked to a publisher about a collectible card game? It's an enormously expensive project to get involved with. Even as Wizards of the Coast found out when they did Magic in 1993, their primary cost was not the printing or the distribution or anything, it was the artwork costs. And yeah, but you can use out-of-copyright art. Well, not for CCG. A lot of people buy CCGs for the art. AI art, yes, AI art is a thing, but certainly within the industry and certainly within the market as well, there's huge pushback against using AI art. Nothing legally wrong with it, at least not provably legal at the moment, although a lot of the data sets have been trained on art that they didn't have permission to use. But just within the audience, there's pushback against AI art. People don't like it and they don't like products that use it. And that's end consumers as well as retailers and distributors. And if you haven't got the distributors on side for a collectible card game, then, you've got no hope of making it succeed. But that goes for roleplay stuff as well. Don't use AI art on the cover. Because I'm not saying my personal views on AI completely aside. I'm not going to get into that. And that's a 15-minute rant right there, listeners. You will switch off half your audience straight away. They'll go, AI art, not interested. Or the moment someone on a forum goes, oh, don't touch that, it's got AI art in it. Bang, you've lost a whole chunk of your potential audience. And as a publisher, and you have to start thinking like a publisher, that's a really bad way to start off launching a product. So all of these things that you should, you need to be aware of before you actually launch your product. Yes, you could do it in an evening. No, that is not the best way to do it.
Well, James, let's kind of move towards wrapping up. Far more important question at all these. What are you playing at the minute?
What am I playing at the moment? Because I do this podcast. I do a roleplay podcast called Ludonarrative Dissidents. Dissidents, not dissonance. We should have thought twice about doing a podcast with a pun in its title in a verbal medium. But it's me, Greg Stolze, and Ross Payton, role-playing designers. Ross is well known for his podcasting as well. And each episode, we just take a role-playing game apart and basically field strip it down to the bare elements, looking at it from a design perspective. What does it do? Why does it do that? How do people play it? Why do they play it that way? So we've been testing the games that we do. I don't test all of them, I have to say. Alice is Missing, I've played recently, which is just a one-off thing, played in text messages. I actually played the online version, which I felt needed more structure or needed better explanation. We've got a session of Mothership coming up very soon, which I'm really looking forward to. It's not the official, it's the unofficial Alien game, basically. Yeah. So it's not just bound by the rules of the Alien universe. It's all kinds of outer spacey horror stuff. Really looking forward to that. I don't have any campaigns on the go at the moment. I do need to get a game that I am working on into playtest, but I can't tell you about it because it's being pitched to a publisher and it's based on a licensed property. But I will say it is heroic fantasy. I'm really excited by it. And if it comes off, I would love to come back on and just blurt everything about it.
Say all the things you haven't been able to say.
So many cool, I can't even tell you who I'm designing it with, so many cool design ideas for it, for making it work, for making it just fit very much within. I mean, what I can say is that we are designing it in the tradition of the British old school role-play systems, like Advanced Fighting Fantasy, Maelstrom, Dragon Warriors, games like that. That flavour of the early to mid-1980s, but British. That's what we're aiming for, but at the same time with a lot of the modern mechanical stuff that just makes the narrative and character generation and everything so much more interesting. I think we've got something really fun. I really, really hope the publisher goes for it.
Exciting stuff. And I think throughout it we've plugged all the main important things. If people want to know more about you, they can go to your website. www.jameswallis.com or www.space.com, space with 3 A's, which is my consultancy, which I have to say I'm running down as Big Table comes up. Big Table is www.bigtable.games, and that's probably about it. And Ludonarrative Dissidents is www.ludonarrativedissidents.com, and best of luck spelling that. Just keep Googling it.
It's linked to from, I think, my other websites.
I think if you use the future conditional in any document you write, then that will summon the
vengeful spirit of Greg
Cruz.
Stolze, whose shtick within it is to complain about games that use the word "will" too much. Except in the the latest one we had to we recorded, he had to pull that back because "will" is actually one of the stats of the characters. So,
that's a bit like the D&D edition that replaced mage with wizard, resulting in various things doing 6 hit points of the wizard. Yes,
glorious.
But if people want to hear you talk about the history of Games Workshop,
yes, or the history,
where can they find out about that? Has that been and gone? Or?
That's I'm hoping to get some more bookings for that. I've done it twice so far. It's with Seed Talks, who are a company that just do most of what they do, or they started off at least doing talks on kind of wellness and physical well-being and stuff, but they've branched out into geekdom. So they have really good people talking about Studio Ghibli, for example, or Tolkien, or me talking about the history of Games Workshop, or the history of Warhammer. And this is usually, it's an evening gathering. It's a live event. Sometimes they live stream them. But have a look at the Seed Talks website. Even if I'm not there, I'm pretty sure you'll find something of interest. They're doing a big one on psychedelics in the very near future.
Okay. And presume, like many of us, moved away from X.
I have.
Always known as Twitter.
Yes.
Where can people find you online?
On the socials, Blue Sky. Basically, I like Blue Sky a lot. I'm off Facebook these days. My account still exists on Facebook. My icon there is a black circle that just reads "not checking this account," so don't bother following it. But yeah, Blue Sky basically is the best place to stay in touch with what I'm doing and my crap jokes.
All right. I mean, that's what it's for, isn't it? That's what social media is really
completely,
for.
Yes.
Everything else is somewhere between a byproduct and a bug. Excellent. Well, thank you so much for your time, James. Listener, if you want to find out about all of that, wherever on the internet you found this podcast, there will be text leading you to it. Because of the unique way that my podcast provider works, there will not be links in the show notes, but there will be explanations in the show notes of how to find things. If I put links in, it tells me I'm spam and it won't let me do it.
Good Lord.
I don't know why, but I'm too deep into this now. Thank you, listener, so much for sticking with us as James and I have caught up talking about Big Table and beyond. Catch us next time on the next episode of the D20 Future Show. Thanks, James.
Thank you.
Well, that's all for now from the D20 Future Show. You can find us on our Twitch channel, twitch.tv/D20 Future Show, on Blue Sky and Mastodon as D20 Future Show, and even on Facebook. Do come say hi. Otherwise, we'll catch you next time, whenever that turns out to be, on the next episode of the D20 Future Show.
What was the phrase they used? I can't even remember. Cut this bit out, it's crap.
I will cut this bit out. There we go. My dog insisting on being let out. I shall also be editing that bit out.